Welcome to Ruler of the World 3D, the podcast where storytelling and gaming collide. I'm your host and storyteller, guiding you through the immersive world of Bob. Our journey unfolds as we delve into the captivating storyline creating during the inaugural game of Nation State, the board game brought to life on this podcast. Each episode offers a new chapter in the unfolding narrative, shaped by the decisions and the actions of our listeners and supporters. Speaking of supporters, a special shout out to our first Patron, Peter Gordon, whose generous contributions help bring this show to life. This week, Peter takes the reins as our guest storyteller, treating us to a unique tale crafted with creativity and passion. So join us in this epic adventure as we explore the world of Bob, create unforgettable stories, and work together to shape the future of the board game. I'm your host, and together, let's rule a world in 3D. On with the show!
Hi, my name is Peter. The first thing I want to say is thank you to Daniel for extending me this invitation to be on his podcast to talk about nation states and the Newts. I've never been on a podcast before, so this is an exciting opportunity for me. I'm an avid board game player and hobbyist designer. First met Daniel on a 3D printing for board games Facebook group, where he extended the invitation to participate in the Nation States project. So, one of the first things you're invited to do in Nation States is to create an empire that will participate for control of the world of Bob. I'm used to games which start everyone from the ground up, but in Nation States, options are much wider, and the vision of the game is much more open. As Daniel and I were batting around ideas and books that inspired us, I remembered The War with the Newts, a 1936 satirical science fiction novel by Carol Kapik. I've never actually read the book, but it involves the discovery of another sentient species on the planet Earth, which is at first exploited, but then learns quickly and revolts. The Newts like coastland for their habitat, and then proceed to terraform most of the planet to their liking by raising the ocean levels, much to humanity's chagrin. I'd always thought this was an amusing idea, and had previously made my own humorous Velociraptor meme. You call it climate change, we call it terraforming. So I decided to just run with it. Of course, if you're going to terraform something, you have to have something to terraform. And we had been looking at some ideas using hemisphere-based maps of Bob from a global theater game I had written in 2018 that are somewhat unique and support temperature bands near the poles and equator very nicely, as well as inner Earths, or as we have started to call them, under-Bobs, within Bob. I was having fun thinking about terrain types and the problems or benefits associated with being a cold-blooded amphibious race. The map now had a method for generating elevations as it was explored, plains, hills, and mountains. But this begged the question as well, what about under the water? It's not all just flat and boring. Here, the same elevation results for lands now became depths, low, deep, and trench. And as soon as I saw the trenches, I thought, ooh, what's down there? It started the creative juices flowing, and that's what I love about my involvement with nation states. The next few questions that Daniel asked really started to get things going. What about the Newt religion? I thought, well, I'm a little lazy. I started searching the internet for ideas on various water gods. The Newts, I felt, if unchecked, would eventually be exploring the deeps and making things inhospitable for land dwellers. What would make sense? What would support such a thing? Oh, and there she is, Hydra, from the old TSR Fiend Folio 1981 that I used to love. The evil elemental princess of water. This was a little strange because I had never thought of the Newts as evil before, and I'm still not sure I do now. Rude, certainly, but in later incarnations of Wizards of the Coast, Hydra's religion was known as the Cult of the Crushing Wave, and this does make sense for what they're doing. Hydra it is. What about the Solar Civil War? Daniel asked. How did the Newts come to Bob? What Solar Civil War? I hadn't listened to the podcast yet, didn't even know they existed. I didn't even know why Bob was named Bob yet, but I do now. I searched the rulebook I had been spending some time organizing and adding my ideas to. And that's when the pieces started to come together in my mind as I read the stories of the nations that were already there and the history that was already there. I started to see where the Newts fell into that picture. How long ago was the Solar Civil War? I asked. About 1,000 years, Daniel replied. Another thing that is really unique about nation states is that Daniel, inspired, I think, by Last and First Men, written in 1930 by Olaf Stapledon, laid out many, many eras a nation state can belong to or that the game can be played starting from. The empires of Ishram and William's kingdom are remnants of formerly interstellar empires, Ishram having colonized Bob only recently, and Williams having been native but decimated and driven into hiding during the Solar Civil War. So, where do the Newts fit into all of this? And then, having read the history of others, I was able to write my own. Really, it just wrote itself. The Newt history. The Newts are native to Bob, but relatively new as an organized sentient species. Before the Solar Civil War, 1,000 years ago, they existed on Bob, but in a less evolved, culturally disorganized state, and were more or less disregarded by other species as interesting, semi-intelligent curiosities. We cannot say for certain how the events of the Solar Civil War triggered their uplifting into an organized species, but it did. Perhaps it was the radiation bombs dropped on Bob and the disruption of the environment they lived in that provided the catalyst for their change. Perhaps it was that suddenly a niche was open, as other sentient species on the planet had either destroyed each other or left, thus providing the opportunity for the Newt species to flourish and develop. But we do know that it was at this time, when the skies and the land were burning, that the Newts began to call on the water for their salvation, and the water began to answer. It was at this time that religion began to form in their culture, and a dedication to a being that called itself Ulhydra took root. And while the Newts are native to Bob, Ulhydra, a being from the elemental plane of water, most definitely is not. How long Ulhydra has been active on Bob is unknown. Perhaps to some degree she is everywhere. On every planet there is water. Or perhaps somehow the events of the Solar Civil War drew her there. Perhaps the desperation of the Newts, not comprehending the destruction of their environment, called her to Bob. Whatever the case, she has been guiding the Newt civilization and its development towards her own goals. And as the Newt worship of Ulhydra on Bob increases, so does her power there, and so does theirs. And once I had written that history, I understood the Newts. Next, their religion. The Newt religion. The Newts follow Ulhydra, an elemental water deity, not a particularly nice one. The state religion, which is more or less the state government as well, is the cult of the crushing wave. Priests have a dominant sway over the people, though they do allow magical and technical research, quote, as long as it is being directed appropriately, unquote, meaning that it is helping the cult to achieve its goals. The terraforming fanaticism of the Newts is probably being driven mostly by Ulhydra herself. She is using them as a means to an end to scour other land-dwelling creatures off the face of the earth so that the waters can finally reign supreme over the land on Bob. After that, we have the Newt era and government. Obviously not an interstellar race, and obviously not a democracy. But I found one of the earlier eras already made available in the rulebook made perfect sense. The rise of the proto-nation states. Transitioning into the era of rise of the proto-nation states introduces the medieval time period. Players gain access to medieval social cards and new settlement buildings, including the ability to construct the adventure hall. Notably, theocracy becomes available as a distinct type of government, adding a nuanced layer to strategic choices in the game. Well, for a nation in an earlier era being manipulated by its god, theocracy, no question. And oh look, an adventure hall for adventurers. I'm in. Anyway, I want to say thank you to Daniel for starting this project. He has been collaborating with me about introducing some Newt-specific cards to the Miracle and Social decks, and constantly introducing me to new tools such as Titancraft and others. Nation States is not so much about the winning as it is about the stories and the creation and the creativity. And I'm really looking forward to being part of the project as it evolves. If you're listening to us and you feel the same, I hope you'll join us. Thanks.
Introducing the Morgan Clan Mega Store, your premier online shopping destination on the planet Bob. Owned and operated by Tieflings, the Morgan Clan Mega Store brings the convenience of online shopping right to your fingertips. Explore the vast selection of products from everyday essentials to luxury items, all available in just a few clicks. Welcome to the Morgan Clan Mega Store. How can we assist you? Need it fast? No problem. Our express delivery service ensures your purchase arrives promptly anywhere on the planet. Shop as securely and confidently with our encrypted payment system and enjoy peace of mind knowing that your personal information is safe with us. Join the growing community of satisfied customers who trust the Morgan Clan Megastore for all your shopping needs. Shop now and experience the convenience of a Tiefling-owned excellence. Morgan Clan Megastore, where shopping is a breeze in the interstellar age. And that concludes another thrilling episode of To Rule a World 3D. We hope you enjoyed the immersive version and enjoy yourself in the rich tapestry of the Bob's ever-evolving story. Remember, the adventure doesn't end here. Your support and engagement fuels our journey, shaping the destiny of nations and characters alike. We extend our heartfelt thanks to our patrons like Peter Gordon, whose contributions help us continue crafting tales that captivate and inspire. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep your creating and keep ruling a world in 3D. Farewell, and our fellow adventurers.